Have you ever wondered what happens when fear becomes stronger than reason? When people stop asking questions and start pointing fingers? In the year 1692, in a small Puritan village called Salem, fear became law and faith turned into fire. It began with whispers. A few young girls claimed they had seen the devil. Within weeks, those whispers grew into screams. And by the time it ended, 20 innocent people were dead, hanged in the name of God. This is the story of the Salem Witch Trials, a dark chapter in history that showed how easily truth can burn. Presented by Biography Plus, where we uncover the real stories behind humanity's most shocking moments. In the harsh winter of 1692, Salem Village was a deeply religious community. Life was strict. People believed the devil was everywhere, in storms, sickness, and misfortune. Then, one night, a group of young girls began to act strangely. They screamed, shook violently, and claimed unseen forces were tormenting them. The town's minister, Reverend Samuel Paris, was terrified. When medicine failed, he turned to something far more dangerous: superstition. Doctors said the girls were bewitched. Soon, the villagers demanded to know who had done this to them. The girls began to name names. At first, it was slaves and beggars, women like Tituba, a servant from Barbados. But fear spreads like fire, and soon, even respected citizens were accused. A young girl pointed at her neighbor and cried, "She's the witch." That was all it took. No evidence, no defense, just an accusation, and your life was over. The courtroom became a theater of terror. Women screamed that invisible spirits were choking them. Men claimed to see ghostly figures in the rafters. The judges, religious men themselves, believed every word. They said Satan was working through the villagers, and only through confession could souls be saved. So people began to confess, not because they were guilty, but because it was the only way to survive. Inside the jails, dozens of people waited in darkness, starved, chained, and praying for mercy. Even children were accused, some as young as 4 years old. Every new confession fueled the next accusation. It was no longer about truth. It was about survival. And as the gallows were built on Salem's Hill, the people began to realize no one was safe anymore. That winter, Salem was no longer a village of believers. It had become a place where fear ruled, and faith destroyed everything it touched. By the spring of 1692, Salem was no longer a town. It was a battlefield of faith and fear. The jails were overflowing. More than 150 people had been accused of witchcraft. Farmers, servants, even respected church members. No one dared speak in defense of the accused, because in Salem, defending a witch meant you might be one. The court of Oyer and Terminer was established to handle the trials. Judges wore black robes, and each day the courthouse was filled with villagers, waiting to see who would be next. Spectral evidence, dreams, visions, and invisible spirits was accepted as proof. A simple claim that I saw her spirit was enough to send a person to the gallows. One of the first to die was Bridget Bishop, a widow known for speaking her mind. She stood before the judges and said, "I am innocent. I know nothing of witches." But the girls screamed in the courtroom, pretending to be attacked by her invisible spirit. The judges believed them. On June 10th, 1692, Bridget Bishop was hanged on Gallows Hill. The crowd watched in silence, and the fear grew stronger. Week after week, the trials continued. The gallows claimed farmers, midwives, even church deacons. One man, Giles Corey, refused to confess. He believed silence was his only defense. So the court used a brutal method to force his confession. They placed heavy stones on his chest, pressing him slowly until he could no longer breathe. His final words before he died were, "More weight." Those two words would echo through history as a symbol of defiance in the face of injustice. Even children were not spared. The youngest accused, Dorothy Good, was only 4 years old. She was imprisoned for months, her innocence crushed under the weight of adult hysteria. Wives accused husbands, neighbors accused friends. Salem had turned into a mirror of madness. where everyone saw the devil in someone else. But by autumn, the hysteria began to fade. People started to question how so many witches could suddenly exist in one small town. Doubt crept in, and when the governor's own wife was accused, the trials abruptly stopped. By October 1692, the court was dissolved. The remaining prisoners were released, but for the 20 who had been executed and the hundreds whose lives were destroyed, justice had come too late. In the years that followed, Salem tried to forget, but the guilt remained. Survivors spoke of nightmares, and judges publicly confessed their regret. One judge wrote, "God forgive me, I was blinded by fear." In 1711, the government offered small payments to the families of those executed, but no amount of silver could erase the stain of blood and hysteria. The Salem Witch Trials remain, a warning carved into the heart of history, a reminder that when fear takes control, truth is the first to die. It wasn't witches that haunted Salem. It was ignorance, power, and the terrible cost of believing in fear. This was the Salem Witch Trials, when faith turned to fire and the innocent paid the price. Presented by Biography Plus, where history's darkest moments are told to remind us what humanity must never become again. Back into Next Pointing Right, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories that reveal the shocking side of our past.